Wife thinks my co-parenting is too close to my ex and asked me to prioritize her. I explained my stance, but it only made things worse. When I was 23 and still navigating the chaos of college life, I found out Anne, my then-girlfriend, was pregnant. It was terrifying and exciting all at once. We were young, broke, and far from established, but we made the decision to become parents. Bran was born just a few months before I graduated, and from the moment I held him in my arms, I knew my life had changed forever. Anne and I were determined to make it work, not just as partners, but as a family. For a while we did. The first years were a whirlwind of sleepless nights, diapers, and trying to balance parenting with starting careers, and was incredible. She managed to finish her degree while raising a newborn. I worked every odd job I could find, sometimes pulling 14-hour shifts to make sure there was food on the table and rent was paid. We grew up together in a lot of ways, but as time went on, it became clear that something was missing in our relationship. It wasn't dramatic or toxic. There were no huge fights or betrayals. We just stopped clicking as a couple. We loved each other as people and as co-parents, but the romance had faded. Therapy helped us understand this wasn't a failure on either side. By the time we divorced, we'd been together for 8 years, and while the decision to separate was heartbreaking, we both knew it was the right choice. From the start, we agreed on one thing. Bran would always come first. Anne and I sat down with a mediator to work out a custody arrangement that would ensure he felt supported and loved by both of us. We split custody 50-50, and I took on a significant portion of the financial responsibility, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I made sure to be involved in every aspect of Bran's life. I wasn't going to be the kind of father who just wrote checks and showed up for holidays. I was there for his soccer practices, school meetings, and every birthday party. Anne and I kept our communication strictly about Bran, and while we attended events together, we were always respectful of each other's boundaries. Looking back, I'm proud of how we've handled things. Bran grew up in a stable, loving environment, even though his parents were no longer together, and remarried a few years after our divorce, and her husband has been a positive influence in Bran's life. I even attended their wedding, because in the end, anything that makes my son's world happier is worth supporting. I met Katie at a friend's wedding 4 years ago, and to say we hit it off immediately would be an understatement. I was there mostly out of obligation, not expecting much from the evening, but then I saw her across the room. She was standing near the dessert table, laughing with a group of people, and something about her energy just pulled me in. Katie wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. We ended up talking for hours that night, and it felt like we'd known each other forever. She was funny, sharp, and had this incredible drive. She told me about her work as a graphic designer and how she dreamed of starting her own agency one day. What stood out to me most was how she listened, really listened. When I told her about my life, including the fact that I was a dad, from the beginning, I was upfront about Bran. I told her about my co-parenting relationship with Anne, how I had a 50-50 custody arrangement, and how deeply involved I was in my son's life. I explained that Bran wasn't just a part of my life, he was my life. Katie didn't flinch. She asked questions about Bran, even made jokes about how she'd probably have to brush up on her knowledge of teenage boy humor. As we started dating, I introduced Katie to Bran gradually. I didn't want to rush things, especially since this was the first serious relationship I'd been in since my divorce. When they finally met, it was clear that Katie had made an effort to connect with him. She asked him about his favorite hobbies, learned about his love for Star Wars, and even sat through The Empire Strikes Back with us during one of our movie nights. I remember watching the two of them laugh together and feeling like maybe, just maybe, this could work. As things got more serious, Katie started spending more time at my place. She joined us for family dinners and even came to a few of Bran's soccer games. I never wanted Bran to feel like he was losing his space or his dad, and Katie seemed to understand that. She respected the dynamic I had with my son, and I appreciated how seamlessly she fit into our lives. When I proposed to Katie 2 years later, it felt like a natural step. I even asked Bran how he felt about it beforehand. His response? "As long as you're happy, Dad." On our wedding day, Bran stood beside me as my best man, and I couldn't have been prouder. I thought we were building something truly special. A family that might not have looked traditional but was full of love and understanding. For the first couple of years, our marriage felt like smooth sailing. Katie and I had our routines, shared hobbies, and seemed to understand each other's needs. She continued to be supportive of my relationship with Bran and even encouraged me to take on new challenges at work. I felt like we were in sync. Then, 2 months ago, Katie brought up the idea of having a baby. It wasn't a completely new topic. We touched on it before we got married. Back then, I'd been honest. I wasn't keen on having more kids. Raising Bran had been one of the greatest joys of my life. But I also knew how much work and responsibility came with parenting. At 39, I wasn't sure I had it in me to start over. Katie said she understood and told me she was okay with that. When she brought it up again, it caught me off guard. We were sitting at the dinner table when she casually mentioned how cute it would be to have a little one of our own. I smiled but didn't say much, thinking it was just an offhand comment. Then, over the next few weeks, she started bringing it up more often. At first, it was lighthearted, imagine a baby with your smile. But then her tone changed. She wasn't joking anymore. One night, she sat me down and asked for a serious conversation. She said she'd been thinking about it for a while and felt like something was missing in her life. According to Katie, having a child of her own was something she couldn't let go of. I told her I needed time to process what she was saying. She agreed to give me some space but seemed disappointed. For the next couple of months, there was tension in the air. Katie started dropping little comments about how life is short, or how she didn't want to look back and regret not having kids. I felt like I was being pushed toward a decision I wasn't ready to make. Then, 2 months after our initial conversation, Katie told me she couldn't wait any longer and needed a clear answer. I told her the truth. I didn't think it was the right time. I suggested revisiting the conversation in a year, hoping it would give us both time to think it through. But that wasn't enough for Katie. She accused me of dragging my feet and being unfair. What started as a discussion about a baby turned into a heated argument about priorities, sacrifices, and unmet expectations. That's when Katie said something that shocked me to my core. I've been patient with you for long enough. You've got your perfect little life with Bran and your ex-wife, and I'm just supposed to be happy on the sidelines? It was the first time I'd ever heard her express resentment about my relationship with Bran or Anne. Up until that moment, I thought we were on the same page. But now, it felt like I was seeing a completely different side of her. The argument that followed was unlike anything Katie and I had ever experienced before. She didn't just express frustration about the baby conversation. She unleashed what felt like years of pent-up resentment. It wasn't just about wanting a child anymore. It was about how she viewed my life, my priorities, and, most shockingly, my relationship with Bran and Anne. Katie started listing everything she thought was wrong with how I handled my role as a father. She accused me of spending too much time with Bran and letting him come over whenever he feels like it. She argued that at 15 years old, Bran was old enough to be more independent and that I didn't need to be so involved in his life. That statement floored me. As a father, I've always believed that being present for your child, no matter their age, matters deeply. Then, Katie shifted her focus to my co-parenting relationship with Anne. She said it was weird and too close for two people who were divorced. She brought up the fact that I still attend Bran's soccer games, where Anne is often present, and how I sometimes show up to family gatherings for Bran's birthdays or milestones. You're divorced. You shouldn't still be acting like a family with her, Katie said, her voice laced with frustration. I tried to explain that everything I do is for Bran. Soccer games, birthday parties, and family events aren't about Anne. They're about making sure my son feels supported and loved. But Katie wasn't buying it. She argued that my level of involvement with Anne was unnecessary and that I should limit communication with her to the bare minimum. No texting, no joint events, and no friendly interactions. The breaking point came when she suggested that I should become a weekend dad. She said it like it was a simple solution, as if reducing my presence in Bran's life would magically fix our marriage. If you just focus on us more and stop letting your past dictate your future, we'd be so much happier, she said. Her words stung like nothing I'd ever experienced before. Bran isn't my past. He's my present and my future. I couldn't believe she would ask me to scale back my role as a father just to accommodate her vision of what our marriage should look like. It felt like everything I thought I knew about Katie was crumbling before my eyes. I asked her why she'd never brought this up before. Why did she say she understood my situation when we were dating? Why did she marry me, knowing full well that Bran and my co-parenting dynamic were non-negotiable parts of my life? Her response cut even deeper. I thought you'd change, she admitted. I thought that once we were married, you'd start putting me first. Hearing that broke something in me. I've always been honest about who I am and what I value. To know she had silently hoped I'd become a different person felt like a betrayal, not just to me, but to Bran. After Katie admitted she'd hoped I would change, the argument took on a life of its own. I tried to stay calm, but the hurt and frustration were building inside me. I told her that if she had issues with my parenting or my co-parenting dynamic, she should have said something earlier. Katie fired back, saying she hadn't wanted to rock the boat or risk losing me. I thought if I gave it time, you'd realize I was your priority, she said, as if I could ever choose one part of my life over another. The conversation quickly spiraled. Katie started accusing me of being stuck in the past, saying that my connection to and wasn't just about Bran but about clinging to an old life. She even implied that I'd intentionally built a dynamic where she could never feel like she was my equal. It's like you've created this world where I'm always second place, she said, her voice shaking with anger. I told her that wasn't true, that my commitment to Bran didn't diminish my love or respect for her. But Katie didn't want to hear it. She said I was too close to Anne, that my dedication to Bran was overbearing, and that I needed to start prioritizing us. When she mentioned becoming a weekend dad again, I finally snapped. I told her I would never, under any circumstances, take a step back from Bran's life. I reminded her that she knew exactly what she was signing up for when she married me, and that I'd been nothing but transparent about my priorities. If you can't accept that, then maybe this marriage isn't going to work, I said. The second those words left my mouth, I saw her expression shift. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. She looked at me as if I'd just confirmed every fear she'd ever had. So, that's it, she asked. You'd throw our marriage away for him? I told her it wasn't about choosing Bran over her. It was about standing by the promises I made as a father. I told her I loved her, but if she truly expected me to compromise my role in Bran's life, I couldn't be the husband she wanted me to be. The argument ended with her packing a bag and leaving to stay with her parents. She didn't slam the door, but the sound of it closing felt final. I sat on the couch for hours afterward, trying to process what had just happened. My mind kept replaying her words, how she felt sidelined, how she resented my relationship with Bran and Anne, how she thought I'd change. Since that night, Katie hasn't responded to my calls or texts. I've reached out multiple times, hoping we could sit down and talk things through, but I've heard nothing from her. It feels like she's putting up a wall, and I'm not sure if it's to protect herself or to punish me. Meanwhile, I've been trying to keep things as normal as possible for Bran. He doesn't know the full details of what's happening, but he's noticed Katie's absence. When he asked about her, I told him we were having a tough time and needed some space. He nodded, but I could tell he was worried. Deep down, I'm torn. I love Katie, and I thought we were building a life together. But her demands feel like a betrayal, not just of me, but of the father I've worked so hard to be. If she can't accept my role in Bran's life, I don't see how we move forward. It's been a few weeks since Katie left, and I've been living in this strange limbo, caught between hope and the sinking feeling that my marriage might be over. I keep replaying our conversations in my head, trying to pinpoint the moment things started to go wrong. Was I too focused on Bran? Did I fail to recognize her feelings earlier? Or was this inevitable from the start, given how fundamentally different our expectations seem to be? I love Katie. That hasn't changed. She brought so much light and joy into my life. And for the first time since my divorce, she made me believe in the possibility of finding happiness again. But now, I'm starting to wonder if that happiness was built on a foundation that was never truly stable. I was always upfront about who I am and what my priorities are. Did she genuinely believe she could accept that? Or was she hoping I'd eventually let go of my role as a hands-on dad? The silence from her end has been deafening. Every unanswered text and missed call feels like another brick in the wall she's building between us. Part of me wants to drive over to her parents' house and demand we talk this out, but another part of me knows that would only make things worse. If Katie needs space, I want to respect that. But how long am I supposed to wait before it becomes clear that she's already made her decision? In the meantime, I've been focusing on Bran. He's my constant, my anchor in all of this. He's noticed Katie's absence and has been asking more questions lately. Is she coming back? He asked me last night, his voice hesitant. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to your teenager that sometimes love isn't enough to make a relationship work? I've also started seeing a therapist. I needed someone to help me unpack everything that's happened and figure out what steps to take next. The therapist has been a godsend, helping me see that it's okay to grieve the possibility of losing Katie while standing firm in my commitment to Bran. One thing she said really stuck with me. You can compromise in a marriage, but you should never have to compromise your core values. Right now, my core values are clear. Bran comes first. That's not negotiable. I'm his father, and I've worked too hard to build a relationship with him that's based on trust, love, and presence. If Katie can't accept that, I don't see how we can move forward. I'm still holding out hope that we can find some kind of middle ground, but I'm also preparing myself for the possibility that this might be the end of our marriage. The thought of that hurts, more than I can put into words, but I refuse to sacrifice my son's well-being for the sake of saving something that may already be broken. Update to the story. 3 days ago, I decided I couldn't take the silence anymore. I went to Katie's parents' house, hoping we could finally talk things through. Her parents were kind enough to let me in, though it was clear they were aware of the tension between us. Katie and I sat in the living room while her parents lingered in the kitchen, probably ready to step in if things escalated. I started the conversation as calmly as I could, asking if she really meant what she said about Bran, that I spent too much time with him and needed to reprioritize my life. She just shrugged, which felt like a dagger to my chest. I tried to push further and asked if she hated him. Her response stung, even though it wasn't outright cruel. No, I don't hate him, but I do think it's unnecessary how much time you give him. Hearing that confirmed what I'd feared. This wasn't just about wanting a baby or feeling left out. It was about a fundamental difference in how we viewed family. I wasn't sure if I was making things worse, but I needed clarity. So, I asked her to imagine the roles reversed. I asked how she'd feel if we had a son together, but I neglected him for a new wife. That's when things blew up. Katie got visibly upset and started calling me every name in the book. Her voice rose, and she accused me of being insensitive and cruel for her, shoving the fact that she doesn't have a child yet in her face. Her parents rushed in, trying to defuse the situation, and managed to get her to calm down. Maybe I should have backed off then, but I couldn't let it go. I kept asking questions because I needed to understand how she truly felt. I asked if she would have treated Bran differently if we'd had a baby together earlier in our relationship. She avoided the question at first, but after pressing, she finally admitted she would have prioritized her biological child. That answer was like a punch to the gut. I wasn't angry. I was heartbroken. I followed up with what felt like the only logical question. If you would prioritize your child, then why are you mad that I've prioritized mine? She didn't have an answer. She just sat there in silence, her eyes fixed on the floor. I tried to shift gears and suggested couples therapy as a way to work through this. I told her I wasn't trying to cast blame on her, but that we clearly needed help understanding each other. Katie flat out refused. She said I was blowing everything out of proportion and portraying her as the problem. That wasn't my intention, and I apologized for any pain I'd caused her. But instead of softening, she asked me to leave. Before leaving, I tried to kiss her, a last-ditch effort to show her I still cared, but she turned away. I asked if she'd be home for Thanksgiving, thinking maybe we could have one more chance to reconcile during the holidays. Her answer was a firm no. As I stood at the door, I told her I'd be speaking to a divorce lawyer after the holidays. I didn't say it as a threat, it was just the truth. She didn't respond or even look at me. I left feeling like something inside me had broken. I think this is it. I love Katie, but after everything that's come to light, it doesn't seem like there's anything left of our marriage to save. Her unwillingness to even consider therapy or compromise tells me we're on completely different paths. I never wanted this outcome. I dreamed of building a life with Katie, but it's clear now that her vision of family doesn't include the kind of father I am, or the kind of father I want to be. For now, I'm focusing on getting through the holidays for Bran's sake. He doesn't deserve to have his life disrupted by all this. After Thanksgiving, I'll take the next steps and contact a lawyer. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know this. My son comes first, and that's something I'll never compromise on.